Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here.
Well, you know, you are a happy guy, or at least you play one on TV. But you are, in doing the research for this show, you have been through more shit than I have seen, honestly, anybody go through. And I've done hundreds of interviews now. So if it's cool with you, I don't want to drag you through the mud here, but I think for context, people need to understand that life was not always so sunny for you. Yeah. So I want to start with your mom. Your mom put you and your three siblings into foster care much earlier, obviously, in your life. Yeah. For those of us that have no clue on what that's like, could you paint a picture of what it was like growing up in that environment?
Yeah, man. Well, there's two sides. I think one's the experiential, and like, in terms of what it actually tangibly was, and one's the emotional side. So, like actual tangible, she just was like, I don't want my kids anymore. And she gave us to the system. And, you go and live with these people that you don't know, that don't know you. And we're what's called a paycheck. It's the best way to explain it. This is back in 1986 when I first went into the system. So we didn't have like phones and there was nobody taping stuff, and you had some really heinous people. And so emotionally it felt horrible. Like it's the feeling that anybody can relate to of like, I don't belong. I don't feel wanted, don't feel loved, or I'm just fearful, like scared and lost. Like that was the start of my emotional, or just experience of life. And then what's even worse, man, is you got some people doing some crazy things. So like I can remember vividly the very first house I went to. They were actually decent people, but like the next four houses were horrible before I landed in my sixth. And so like one, they'd put me in a chicken coop and they'd force me to chase these chickens around and catch one. And if I could catch one at like, 4 years old, I get to eat that night. And if not, I wouldn't get to eat. I end up like sneaking out of the bed to go like try to, climb on the counter and get food. And I would hoard food and I'd get beat when they'd find it. In one house, put me in shopping carts. They'd push me down hills towards moving traffic. I never got hit, thankfully, but they kept on doing it. It was just like this weird, torturous thing. And then one family made me like, I sat in the corner. They forced me to sit on the ground and lick the bottom of the kids' shoes in the neighborhood till like my tongue bled. And this is all before 6. So I had like both a duality of I don't feel like I matter. And I people that my own mom doesn't love me, got rid of me. I don't know where my siblings are at. Like I'm just lost. And the people taking care of me are just horrible people. And you can go and tell the social worker like, hey, they're doing this. But then nobody believes that back then. Like that, why would anybody make you lick people's shoes? Like that's how weird it is. And as a grown man now, man, it sucks. And for a lot of years I was pissed off. But then I finally at 6 years old ended up in a family. It's my family now. Unique dynamic is we were really, really poor growing up. I was the only black person in an all white family in a non-diverse area. So going to school was horrible because I'd get called, racial slurs by kids all the time. Going home, I had my first foster dad in that house, a drunk, used to beat me, beat my mom. Just a lot of turmoil. So the best way to explain it, man, is like until I was 14 years old, I never had any sense of stability or like comfort and peace of a knowing. Like, that knowing of like, this is where I get to go to sleep tonight. I didn't have that until I was like a teenager.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So there's a couple of things that you said that are I'm just trying to understand this. In your estimation, and I know that you don't know the answer to this, but in your estimation, what's the motivation behind why somebody becomes a foster parent? Let's start there.
It's funny that they're changing the name to resource parents. And it's funny. I think they're doing it because there's such a negative connotation to it.
Sure, I bet.
And it is what it is. It's the world we live in. But the thing is, I think there's two types. There are some phenomenal foster parents. My adoptive mom in that family, that the last house, she's amazing, right? There's amazing people out there who genuinely are trying to be there for the kids to raise them. And then you got people that it's a paycheck. And the motivation, I think, is financial for a lot of folks, because if you got a kid who just got to kind of feed them, maybe just as long as it doesn't die, like you get paid for this kid. So I'd have houses where they get paychecks and they wouldn't give me food. They wouldn't clothe me properly. I heard that when I showed up to my last foster home, I was in a black like halter top and like purple corduroys that didn't like fit that weren't like, they're flooding my legs, and like boots that didn't fit. like 100% looked like they went to the dollar store, grabbed some stuff and threw it on me because they wanted to pocket as much money as they could. So
Got it. So it's simply, I didn't understand that. I didn't know how it works. So basically they're getting paid. If they get $500, $1,000, whatever it is, the less they give to you, the more they get to keep. And so you simply are, not to say this is bad, but you're like almost like cattle. You're literally, there's literally a price on your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's people that, like, last thing, people age out. The worst part is kids turn 18, parents don't get paid, they kick him out of the house. My little brother got kicked out of the house. And
because he turned 18 and there was no more profit.
More profit. So that's why 50% of the homeless population spent time in foster care. They age out. It's called aging out of the system. And then they get kicked out of houses all the time. Still, this happens.
Wow. I never realized that. So basically, okay, let me make sure I got this right. So basically what happens is people bounce around from place to place. They get paid for taking care of the kid. 18 years old, no more check. Kid's got to go somewhere. He has no idea where to go. He's been through absolute hell, or she's been through absolute hell. Where do they go? They wind up on the streets. So there's a significant amount of homelessness that comes from this. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, and on top of that, 75% of inmates in prison in America are former foster kids. So they end up in jail too, man.
Okay, well, we're going to get into why that did not happen for you, because it's sort of you have defied gravity with your life, and we're going to get into that. But there's a few things that you said that I want to touch on. One is you mentioned that at around 14 years old, you were adopted by an all-white. They weren't wealthy, they were poor, but they were a loving, at least, family. How did you see white people at that stage of your life? Because I'm assuming that your world was completely African-American, and then all of a sudden you're in a white world. Like when I think about my little white ass showing up in, like, you know, in a completely black environment, just being real, that would be really difficult for me. And it's nothing with black. It could be Chinese. It's just completely different than I was used to. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, interestingly, so I got with this family when I was 6. So the majority of my, like, you know, we'll call it developmental, you know, years, I was with them. So I knew I was black. We'd go to restaurants and it'd be like, you know, table for 6, and it's like there's 7 of us, you know, it's just, there's always a difference. So I knew, and at school I had the issues. So the dynamic was interesting because you just don't feel like when you're not adopted. So any day you could be taken away. So it's like, and then, you go through the situation of it feels and looks funny for a lot of years. No one accepts it. It looks weird. Like you say, that's my dad. He looks like Homer in real life. It's like, it's just an interesting, you know, world. So at 14, here's the thing. I get adopted at 14, play football. The interesting thing, which may not even make sense for a lot of people, is like, I wasn't accustomed to black community. That was the dynamic.
Why? Because you were, but that was at 14 though. Your whole world prior to that was black, right?
Oh, I was 6 to 14 was all white family.
Oh, right. I thought this was the only white family.
Well, no. So I was bouncing around from 3 till 6. So my real mom is white. So I was always in a white family. My real dad was gone. He's obviously a black guy. So for 3 years, it was all black families. And then one white family at 6 years old. I was with them for 8 years. So I was adopted at 14. So most of my developmental years were all around white America. And I didn't have a sense, like, all my best friends to this day are all white guys. I don't have like old school black buddies. It's just, I got friends that are black, but it's not like I've known them since 2nd grade, like my core friends.
Do you feel more white or feel more black?
It's very interesting. I feel 100% as a black man. That's not even a question, because I've had far too many black moments to not feel like a black man. It's just, we'll call it, I've been called Afro penis at the airport. I've been run off roads and called, you know, a nigger on the road. Like, so
you can't not be black when you are black.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's hard to you know, depends on if you tuck yourself away in like middle of Atlanta, maybe you never go outside of it. That's possible. But for me, like, I knew I was a black guy. But white America, like, I have a different perspective than most people that look like me, and because my upbringing, my experience, what I've learned, a different kind of compassion, a different kind of no anger towards it, but a different understanding is the best way to explain it. And yeah, man. So when I got around, honestly, for the first time, black people, I didn't fit because I talk like this. I got called an Oreo when I was a kid all the time. Like, like it was just, I didn't understand the food choices. I was like, why are we putting hot sauce on everything right now? Like,
Right.
I grew up with macaroni and cheese and hot dogs, right? And I was aware of it, but it was a fish out of water. Like, it was like going from like this fresh water to seawater. It was vastly different. But I found my groove. I understood who I was, where I stood in society, and I got to my footing, we'll call it. But I definitely wouldn't say I feel more white just because I grew up with white people. I just have a different lens at which I see the world because I grew up with white people.
It's interesting. I spent 4 months last year living. I accomplished a bucket list, and I wanted to go try living in Italy. So I went with my family. We moved to Florence for a few months, and when you think of Italy, you think of Italians and talking with the hands and the food and the whole thing, and they do that. But what is bizarre is when you run into somebody who is like Korean or Japanese, but was raised in Rome. Do you know what I mean? And like you see this, like it's like this mind fuck with your head where they're like talking with their hands and like you got to try this pasta, and you're like, whoa, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So nature and nurture is really interesting. Take me back to the moment that you were in the car taking the ride and you were entering the house for the first time when you were adopted, if you can remember that. Can you
Yeah.
sort of like describe what was going through your head at that time? Do you remember it? Are you like associated to these memories, or do you look at them as like, you're watching a movie, but you're not necessarily connected to it?
The disconnect started happening once the anger went away. That was a big piece of it. But I definitely vividly remember them all. I remember the very first house we went to that was 3 years old. And talking like, over the years when I was a kid, I had to see therapists because they and you should. But I did, and it was helpful. But I could unpack the entire like layout of my house and the first house we lived in. I can walk through it in my head still from three, right? So I remember the first house, remember all the houses. But the final home, I remember going to the house, was 47 Bryan Avenue in Antioch, California, down the street from the Jack in the Box. And I remember just going in the house. And when you first enter these environments and these families, you're not going in like, oh, I'm home. You're going in like, another place to go, So I literally ran in. I remember walking in. I ran in, went to the left. I was like, where's my room? And there's my room over here with my brother at the time, Brad, still my brother. And like, there's toys there. So I ran to the left and went in the room, started playing with toys. I remember he got mad, like, who's a little black kid playing with my toys?
Yeah, right.
But I do remember that in a sense of it's not like this warm, I'm home feeling. It's just like, I'm at a place. That warmth had to take time to kind of get there. I was a crazy little kid. I was told, my mom, I don't remember this part, but I guess I broke like 2 or 3 lamps at the house in the first week. Because what most people don't realize is when you're in those situations, you're trying to go home. You're trying to go back to your mom. You want your mom to love you. So you'll do everything you can to be really bad to go back home, which is why the foster, the call them the social workers, they don't believe the crazy stories because most kids are doing crazy stuff to go back home or just to act out. The only control they have is the control of crazy to ruin the life of the person that's there because they had a bad deal, which I get emotionally. So yeah, I remember that, but it wasn't like this warm, like I'm home feeling. It was more of like, here's the next place I'm at.
So interesting. Did you connect at that time at all to your mom?
Yes and no. My real mom's what's called a pathological liar. So she is mental issues for sure, but she would say things and believe them. So we had these visitations always set up. It started out like every week we'd go out to Martinez, and we this little building out there. We'd meet with her in a room with toys and hang out. And then we an hour, and then social worker takes us back to foster care. And so what happens if they miss visitations, they extend the time period between the visitation and meetings. So she wouldn't make it. And then she'd call me that night and give me some crazy reason as to why she didn't make it. And then, it's like, well, all right, Miss Trucks, you're not making it. So we're going to have to extend this from a week to every 2 weeks, then be, a month, and then it'll be 2 months, 3 months. And it kept extending out. But it was always a crazy story, dude. She'd tell me things like she was a Mensa member and had a meeting, or she worked for NASA. One time she owned Apple. Like, I'm talking crazy things she was concocting. And then as a kid, when you're 6 and 7, you believe in your mom. And then she'd always do this one thing that was super just, man, I have a lot of anger around the fact that she did it, but I understand with a different sense of appreciation and understanding now of her position, her plight. But what she used to do is say, hey, pack a bag at 8 o'clock. I'm going to come by, hop out the window, get in the car, we're going to take off and live our lives. And so as a kid at like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it's what you want. I want my mom. I want my mom. I want my mom. And every night that you'd miss it, bro, you'd sit by the window. I'd have a backpack and watch cars go. And imagine every time you see lights, your heart racing and then sinking as it drove by again.
Ugh.
And then eventually I would cry myself to sleep. And up until 14, I would wet the bed every night that it took place. And so I just eventually at 14, I thankfully, I got to the point of like, it's enough. I had enough of this. And at that age, you can kind of choose a little bit more of what your path is. And so I went to court. I stood up in front of a whole courtroom in front of her, had a judge. I was in his chambers prior to, I remember all this. And I had to look my mom in her face and say, I no longer want you to be my mom anymore. And I severed her rights. And that's what allowed me to get adopted.
And then you become emancipated, I think is the word, or something like that, or that's not it?
It's not so much an emancipation, but it's more of like a relinquishing of the parental rights. So I could sever what's called parental rights. So her parental rights kept me from being adopted. This family wanted to adopt me for years. My mom eventually divorced that first guy after a couple of years, and she remarried, who's my dad now, who's actually only 12 years older than me. My dad's only 12 years old. It's so interesting.
Do you have a connection with your mom now?
My real mom?
Yeah.
No, man. That was like, I cut ties with her at 14. I heard from her again when I was 18. She somehow called my cell phone. I was getting a college scholarship offer. I was going to go to Oregon. I was set to go. And she called me out of the blue, complete blue, I don't even know how she got my phone number. Like, hey, I need a kidney. Or I'm going to die in 6 months. If you give a kidney up, you ain't playing college football, So I'm like, I got to go to college. Don't go to college. Come live with me in Jacksonville, Florida. Give me your kidney. And it was hard, but I was like, no. And so I eventually said no. And she lived, it's just one of her crazy things she does again. And the last time I talked to her, I had my son with my high school sweetheart at 20 years old in college, my sophomore year of college. Somehow she had moved about 2 hours north of me and was called, what is it? Mount St. Helens, Oregon. I was in Eugene. She was in Mount St. Helens with my grandmother. My biological grandmother lived up there apparently. And so she had somehow like found out the school, because obviously I'm on national television playing football now. So she's seeing me and she calls and like, I want to see my grandson. I'd had a son now. And I was like, no, it's the only way you're going to see this child is if you tell me the truth about what took place and why I was put into foster care. Because her entire story was always, well, the government paid my boyfriend $10,000 to beat me up to take you guys. And I'm like, I remember you giving me away. I remember where you were staying. I remember all that. Like, that's not the truth. And until you can tell me the truth, you can never be in my life. And never heard from her again.
Okay. On the flip side, you met your biological dad when you were 19. Could you tell me
20.
sort of like 20?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me what sort of led up to you meeting him?
So it was a complete accident. So my birth certificate says my dad's name is Daniel Patrick O'Byrne, which is an Irish white guy's name. My mom is white. So something went wrong or somebody's lying, right? So when my grandma and my mom lived up north, my grandmother was a little more like, she's old lady, but she was more joyous. And so I talked to her and her name was Clara Trucks. And she passed away a few years back. And anyway, so she had, been talking to her and I was like, hey, and it's a funny thing, my high school sweetheart, like we're cutest couple in the yearbook. I was homecoming king. She's there. She's been with me through all of it. We even had some craziness, which I'm sure you know too. But we get to this point where we're up in college freshman year in a dorm room talking to my grandma, my fiance, she's my fiance now at 18 years old. Cause I'm a young guy. Like I want to marry this girl. And she says, ask your grandma what your real dad's name is. I'm like, no, I'm not going to ask that. Just ask. So I asked, what's his name? Grandma goes, no, I can't. But your mom said I could never tell you his name. And I was like, okay. And she goes, no. My wife goes, you better ask her again. You better press this. She knows it. Figure it out. So I pressed her a couple more times. She's okay. Your dad's last name is Asaibovo. She spells it out, tells me his first name's Anthony also. They call him Tony. So we go look on a little database in the internet. And lo and behold, there's like 3 Asaibovos in the entire country that live in Marietta, Georgia. And so it's funny. Like I'm like, all right, I'm worried. Like, do I call this guy? What goes on? My wife, she's like, you better call him. So get the number, give him a call. And it's funny because he picks up and it's like, hello, who is this? Like heavy Nigerian accent. And I'm bad Nigerian accent. I'm like, hi, my name is Anthony. I don't know if you know a woman named Marie from Concord, California. He goes, no, but I know one from Martinez. Like, and so Martinez is neighboring to Concord. He says in 1983, she left me because she said she was pregnant with an Italian man's baby. And obviously I was like, well, nope, it didn't take place. My name's Anthony. I was born in December of 83. And I think I might be your son. And he kind of paused and he goes, okay. And like, he went into this whole thing and he, didn't know I existed all these years. And and all this kind of crazy. And it's cool the way I met him too. So when I met him, I was in college, obviously, and he lived in Marietta, Georgia, and we were going to play Mississippi State, the opening game this next year. And I was what's called a true freshman. I never redshirted. I got into college and I was playing my very first year from high school, which is not a normal thing. I was just a special teams guy. And then I wanted to play linebacker. I wanted to start on defense, but I was against a fifth-year senior. He had redshirted his fifth year, my second year, right? I'm just here. The only way that I was going to be able to start is if I beat this dude out. Well, I went ham, Rob. Like I bawled. Like I wanted this damn spot. And I got it, man. So my very first collegiate start took place. I got a game ball. We won the game, and I got to beat my dad. And we played on national television for the first time.
Oh my God. What year, random question, but I'll explain why in a second. What year was that phone call to your dad? Do you remember?
Yeah. That was 2000 and, I was still in dorms. It was 2002. Had to be. I graduated 02. It was 2002. Yeah.
Okay. I was living in Marietta, Georgia at that time. Is that the craziest shit ever? I went to chiropractic school, and I was a chiropractor for 25 years. And I went to chiropractic school there. That's when you said Marietta, I was like, that ain't that big. The only thing there is the big chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's it. They have this giant, like literally, it looks like the size of the Empire State Building, almost like a Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's a chicken. That's it. Okay. Well, if that wasn't enough, if my research is correct, it looks like your grandparents committed suicide.
My grandfather.
Is that correct? Your grandfather did.
My senior year, my mom, my adoptive mom's dad. So there's a lot going on, man. So at 14, right, you also didn't share. It's like my mom got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Yeah. And an 808 or crick. Like she was in a wheelchair by my senior year. So it was like 4 years, 4 years. She was already in a wheelchair. So like around that time, my grandfather, he had took off up to Idaho because he just a tax type stuff, to be honest. I think it's like tax evasion kind of thing. I don't know, who knows? But I'd gone to visit him a few times when I was in foster care, and like his horse and stuff, but he was like the Christian center of the family. Like he was that guy. And I remember we had played against Stanford. I'd come home, we played against Stanford. My whole family was there, and we'd all come to visit. Cool times. And then like, I remember walking out after the locker room, we'd won the game, and I kind of walk out and you see the solemnness on everybody's face. And I didn't know what had gone on at all. And my brother kind of says, I need to talk to you. And he pulls me aside and he says, last night, Grandpa put a gun in his mouth. He took his life. And it was a very unsettling situation. Because it's like one of those things where like, not him, like how, he's the anchor, like he's the guy, he's grandpa, and it's just to have that, dude, the next week really unsettled me. It was the first time that I'd had like this deep loss in a way that was like a really like a connected relationship of love. I love this guy. He was my grandpa, and to lose him was weird. And the way it took place, it was horrible. And yeah, man, just unsettled me. And that started the wheels spinning of like, man, this is crazy. Like when you can't wrap your head around something and you try, it spins you up, man. It just really. And so I was unsettled. I had to go home a couple of days during a week. I practiced, was kind of aloof and a loss, and it was good. I had a good position coach, Don Pelham, DP. He's down at UCLA now. He's really good at kind of, putting things in perspective, making me understand things. I'm glad that he was my coach when this stuff was going on in that capacity, for sure.
All right. So I'm sort of like building here to the peak of this mountain. So I want the listener to bear with me, because it feels like I can't take any more of this. This man, what he's been through. But I promise you, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. You decided that you wanted to go all in on football. Yeah. From high school to college, and you ultimately wound up playing pro for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What would you say created the drive to be that good that you could become a pro football player? Was it proving something to yourself that you could do it, or was it your love for the game, or was it a desire that you wanted to have wealth? What was the driver for you?
It was, I think it's more of like having the world appreciate me. The thing is, I didn't even think NFL until like my junior year of college. Most people think that as a kid, I was like, I want to play in the NFL. It wasn't that at all. It was never a really anchored thought. At one time, my senior year, someone had mentioned like it's possible. I was like, that'd be cool. But it wasn't this thing that settled into my heart And what it really was I played football because it was the first thing that made me feel like I mattered. That was it. When I was in high school, like, and I couldn't find my footing or my place, getting good at football made people like me. And then made people cheer. And I got to where I was the guy. And so I carried that on. And then what it always has been, and it currently is in my life, is, all right, what's next? Like, not that I'm not appreciative of my life and what I have, but I feel like I've beaten so many random odds, and I'm like, what else can I do? It's like the bonus rounds of life. So football came to this point where it's like, all right, I'm in college and I just want to know what's next. And if it's a possibility, I'm going to sell out to do it. And so I create this really weird perspective of, I just got to figure out what's the rhythm I got to get into to get to that next tier. And so when I was in high school, it was a certain rhythm to get to college. And in college, it was a certain tick of, whether it's school or practice or, lifting weights. I had a baby, right? At 20 years old, I had a son. So I'm now a full-time student and I got a kid and I'm all doing all this kind of dynamics, but I'm still pressing and building and growing. I tear my shoulder my sophomore year, unfortunately, but it was always this push to, like, make sure I don't fall short of the potential or opportunity in front of me. And so that was really what it was, man. For football, the grind became this thing I fell in love with. And I wasn't worried about the destination. I fell in love with the days. Just there's a certain joy I found and find in the monotony that most people are trying to forget and avoid and only focus on the end result. I love just the showing up. I love the life of life.
It's interesting. I can imagine that when you have, sort of like very few people in your corner, feeling like you're not worth anything, and then having crowds of people cheering for you and regularly cheering for your accomplishment, that must have been so fulfilling. It's what?
It's actually super awkward.
Awkward? Why? Oh, because you're unfamiliar with it.
So to be honest, I didn't know how to take a think or how to appreciate something and say thank you properly until I was like my early 30s.
Because you had no training in it.
It's no training. And it's also this thing the world has always showed you don't deserve that. The people closest to you haven't, showed that your own mom didn't. So I always felt like guilty to get thank yous. And I was like, you guys are wrong. You guys are tripping. I know you're cheering for me, but like, this is just weird. It's wrong. Right. It took me a lot of years to get to the point of like, oh no, you deserve that. You're a good guy. It wasn't your fault. You were put in foster care. So it is fulfilling, it's interesting. It's a feeling like I like it, but then you're like, oh wait, should you like it? Super interesting dynamic took place inside of me for a long time.
Yeah. It's got to be frying your brain. You were traded to the Steelers, and then you had an injury that effectively ended your career. Did you know that injury was it for you?
Not at first.
Or did you try and push through it and rehab it?
No, I mean, at first you push through and try to rehab. And that's the thing is it's football. It's not for long. NFL is not for long, that's what it stands for.
I never heard that. Of all the NFL players I've interviewed, I've never heard that. That's great.
Yeah, you get in and then you get out. And,
I love that.
So when I get there, you tear your shoulder. So it's my third year. So it was the Buccaneers and the Redskins and the Steelers. And the Steelers, I got picked up like week 8 or something. And the next year, first preseason game, I tear my shoulder. And I don't know it's the end of my career. In the beginning, it's like, it's an injury. I had a right shoulder surgery in college, left shoulder surgery, no problem. But here's what took place. I rehabbed. I kind of got back, started getting workouts the next year. And then my agent says, look, the teams that are flying you in, they'll sign you. The Buffalo Bills wanted to sign me. He's like, they want to bring you in. However, they're only going to bring you in if they put a waiver on your shoulder. A waiver means if you happen to have an injury in that area, no one's covering it. They're not covering it. NFL's not covering it. You're covering it. So if you hurt yourself,
you mean the medical expense, or you're going to get if you tear it again, you're out of the contract.
No, if you tear it, so medical. Well, yeah, they'd cut you. So if you get hurt, they have a reason they can cut you. They don't have to keep paying you. And you're the one on the hook for paying for the medical bill. You got to pay for surgery.
So it's like a pre-existing condition that they have, if like when insurance, before Obama changed insurance, if somebody had a heart problem and they tried to get insurance, they'd say, okay, great, we're going to cover everything except the heart.
Yes, that is. And the problem is if I go out there and hurt my shoulder and I can't move my arm anymore, I can't even go home and get a regular job. I wouldn't be able to go and do any kind of job. So the thing was difficult. My agent tells me, says, either one, you accept this contract and realize like the really scary position you put yourself and your family into, because of if you're handicapped, like you can't do anything unless you're going to come up with $100,000, which is probably most of your contract, to pay for this surgery and be out and pretty much have a healthy shoulder, but no money. He's like, or you look about hanging it up, man. Like this may be the end of the road. And I remember I was sitting in like this room, and it was like this really heavy weight of the realization of this was the end of my road. At 13 years of who I was had just dissipated into thin air. Every part of who I was in my being had ended, right? I had given everything to this game and it was gone. And I remember like sitting there as like a grown man, like ugly crying. Cause it's like I'm mourning something. It was the death of this part of me. And then I was now ushered into this world we call the real world. And this thing is crazy. Like, it's a weird up and down, but here's the worst part. It was also scary because when you're playing football, you don't have life. You're not given skills of like, I don't have internships under my belt. I never had a job before. I don't know how to do anything. It's just, I'm just a guy who used to play football, and unless I'm going to get paid to tackle people anymore, like I'm going to go to jail for doing that. So I gotta find out a new way to make a life. And it was like starting from scratch, and it was scary, bro. And it was sad all at the same time.
All right, so now here you are. You're faced with, you have this horrible background, upbringing. You get this gift of being in pro football. The gift is ripped from you effectively. And now you're faced with having to put food on the table for your family. So you decide, I'm going to become a personal trainer. I'm into fitness. I'm good at it. I can do that. And then that leads into you opening up a gym. And then that sort of becomes this giant time suck for you away from your family. And then your wife cheats on you. And it all comes crashing down. So looking back now on that time, what was the lesson for you? Not the whole lesson with your whole life. I want to stay with just that time, because this show is called Work Hard, Play Hard. And a lot of the people that listen to the show, they're entrepreneurs, they're all in on work and they want to do a great job. But even if they love what they do, it's to the detriment sometimes of the connection with their wife and their children, because it's all they do. And it sounds like there was a little bit of that going on for you. Maybe you can kind of talk through that.
Not a little bit, a lot of it, man.
Okay.
So I came, obviously all took place. So now I guess the lesson that I unpacked was when this all took place, man, I gave all my all to the gym because I had to find some way to be the guy again. And the best way I could was my degrees in kinesiology. I know sports. I got a little bit of money. Let me open a gym doing something I know how to do. And so I had a job for like 7 days as a trainer, then I decided to open my own gym. And I had no idea what I was doing. Rob, 9 months
no business sense.
No business sense, no business plan, never had a gym membership. I mean,
you were the guy who knew how to make pizzas, but you didn't know how to run a pizza business.
Yeah, 100%. And that was it. And I wasn't even good at making pizzas yet. You know what I'm saying? I just knew I could. So I start this business, and 9 months in, I'm looking at bankruptcy, and I'm on the hook like $250,000, and I got nothing. A guy serves me with paper from the landlord to pay or quit in 2 weeks. Yep. And at the same time, I'm going through the process of, I've been at the gym 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. My wife and I had twins. So we have 3 kids. She's at home with newborn twins and a 4-year-old. And I'm gone, legit gone, like non-existent as a husband. And I'm not even making money. So I'm in this weird turmoil trying to find myself and make an excuse. I'm just making these promises too that are getting broken left and right. And it comes to the point where, yeah, man, I come to find out on this vacation we took to Hawaii, she sleep with somebody else. I'm out of shape, because I'm just stress eating because of this gym business. I'm not even a present.
Which is the irony of the whole thing, right? You do the business to make money to support them, and you're into fitness, and you wind up becoming overweight and losing the marriage, which is completely the opposite of what you intended in the beginning, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so then you guys, obviously, I'm assuming that relationship ended, yeah?
It took a while to end, and the reason it ended, and I realized even how it all took place. You asked for the lesson. Here's the lesson: the fruit of the tree, right? So it did fall apart. We did get divorced. We were divorced for 3 years. That's a whole crazy. I don't know how deep we go, but like someone got shot. We'll put it at that point. We may leave it there. We could have packed. You let me know. But we get to this point.
You can't leave that fruit dangling. So how did somebody get shot? There. All right, well, I'll let you circle back.
Yeah. So what I found was like in my life, we all kind of have like the fruit of my labor was this football thing, dude. Like this was the fruit, and the fruit fell off the tree, and then I felt the fruit. I'm this fruit, and then when that thing falls off, like football, like or anything in life, or a real fruit, it's the ground. Farmer picks it up. It can travel to the store. It can go to your house. It can still sit there, but after a while, man, it starts to rot.
Okay, so when you talk about the fruit of the tree, like I'm trying to understand that. What do you mean by that?
So the fruit is like the fruit. We all hear the fruits of your labor, like the fruits of your labor or whatever. And the fruit of my labor in my life was football. And when that football was there, like this fruit kind of fell off the tree and then it hit the ground. And then like, we are this fruit. What ends up happening is like, it can last for a bit. It can still be a ripe edible fruit. You can go to the store, go to your house, but after a while, sit in your house, it'll eventually rot. And I felt rotten. I felt like that fruit. I'd shriveled and died. And we all feel this way. I lose the job, lose the girl, lose the relate, whatever it is. But then I never realized I was never the fruit. I was always the tree. The biggest lesson within all of this was like when we think we're the fruit, we stop taking care of the tree. So all the fruit dies. So when my fruit of football fell off, I stopped taking care of the marriage and myself and the relationship and the parenting. Everything went to nothing because the tree wasn't getting taken care of. So it's unfortunate, but like we all get to situations where we lose something and we never quite realize the rest of the things it affects because we stop taking care of the tree. And here's the crazy thing. If you go back to the tree and you take care of the tree, you can create more fruit. Like you can create more abundant, bigger fruit if you take care of it right. You give it nutrients, you prune the branches. And I've done that in my life now. But at the time, man, all the fruit was dying.
That's such an interesting analogy. It's funny. My dad passed not funny, but my dad passed a couple of years ago. And I remember somebody asking me about it. And I used an analogy that was similar to yours. And it felt for me at the time, it doesn't any longer, but at the time, it felt like my father was the tree that when he died, the tree was knocked down. Like I lost the entire tree. Yeah. So I think that I had the reverse where I sort of viewed the tree there. But I love what you're saying, because if you don't take care of the actual tree, it's not going to bear fruit. So right. That's such a great analogy. All right. So let's start shifting into what you're doing now and how you have navigated this. I guess before I get into that, let me ask you this question. We're all going through life. Nobody knows, why we're going through what we're going through, what the predetermined destiny of our lives is, the paths that we're on. We're all on different paths. But yours, arguably, has been a hell of a lot worse than so many. How are you not resentful, fucked up, bitter? Just how are you as stable as you are, considering all of that history?
Yeah. Well, it's why I do the work I do. It's a lot of identity stuff, man. That's kind of what it anchors down to. But to be honest, I was angry. I was frustrated. I was pissed off at the world for a long time, man. It wasn't until probably like my late 20s, early 30s that I really got a good grasp on like who I am. But to be totally honest, what I realized is the best and worst things in this world are people. Just are. Like it's how it is, unfortunately. And a lot of the things that the people that are negative end up doing, I think we place the wrong meaning on it, and the meaning drives us to a place emotionally that we then operate from in a sad way. That's why people get hurt people, hurt people, because we've been treated that way. But what I realized was, for me, I went back to these things that really were formulative of my identity, right? What made me have love, have joy, have anger, all those kind of things. And I looked at my mom and my real dad, who I found out 9 years later, he knew about me the entire time, but never came after me. So like he told me, I was like, I lied to you. He lied to me for 9 years that I knew him, right? And I had him go on, my wife, I had people steal from me in business, just a lot of things. And when I took this look at it, and it happened like around 2016, actually, I want to say, it's kind of when this heavy realization settled in, was a lot of people in life, they do these things that we assume are malicious to us. We assume, people assume my wife cheated on me to get back at me. People assume that my mom gave me away for whatever reason, or my dad or the people stealing from me. And we feel like when it happens, we get pissed. How can you do this to me, right? And what I realized was most people, they're not doing it to you. They're doing it for them. Mm-hmm. I lost you again.
No, I got it.
When you're doing it,
most people, they're doing it not to you, but for them.
Yeah. And then what happens is, if anything, they're just being selfish and they're not thinking about you, but it's not a malicious thing. And then I realized, okay, well, if they're doing it for them, why would they be doing it for them? Or why would they be doing it all? And I realized they're just not given the tools. Somewhere along the lines, They weren't given the perspective, the tools, the heart, the mentality to navigate the situation. They're doing, unfortunately, the best they can, one, or they're doing what they can to alleviate their pain. My wife, her parents never taught her to navigate these situations. She wasn't raised like in hardship, so she didn't know how to navigate tough conversations. So her solution was, I need someone to fulfill my needs. My husband's kind of got these kids. I need to fill the gap. It wasn't, I want Anthony to feel bad. It was like, I need to feel good. My mom was like, I don't know how to navigate this world with 4 kids. Like, just go away, right? My dad was like, well, I got these other kids. He has 2 other kids. I need to take care of them. Do this thing. The guy stealing from me was stealing because he needed to pay bills. It's like, you find like, damn, it's not that I'm saying it's okay, because it's never okay to do what was done. But then the compassionate human of me said, if I care about people, which I do care about people, outside of what this person did to me, if I'd met them and I didn't know them, what does the compassionate heart of me need this person to know or learn or improve upon? And it gave me a chance to create a space for first forgiveness, then help.
So interesting, because your lesson is around compassion and not anger. You went down a completely different road, and I'm assuming that it's just the repetitive exposure to all of these things over and over again that allowed you to see patterns and why people were doing what they do, which is allowing you to navigate it differently. You know, you've said that success only happens when you are to your core, your identity. And when your goals align with your life's vision. Can you sort of unpack for me what you mean by that a bit more?
Yeah. So, I mean, the life vision, unfortunately, some people don't see far enough down the path of what could be. So the vision that people have for life, first, it isn't enticing enough to them. They dream at a level that they think is possible, and most people don't think a lot's possible, sadly. The visionaries are the ones that create something. That's why they do something, because they can see that far. But even if you had a great vision, the problem is if you don't see yourself as that person, you will always run into a wall that stops you. And that wall is what I call an identity wall. I'm not the person who makes a website. I'm not the person who starts a podcast. I'm not the person that asks for that girl's phone number. I'm not the person that gets a promotion. And not that we say it verbally, but we feel that and we act from that emotion. And so when I look at the core of Anthony and what's allowed me to get here, I say identity and it loses people. Think of it more like rhythm. There's a rhythm to how like a song flows and the tempo is and the beat goes. Some songs are amazing. The tempo, the rhythm is beautiful and you just lean into it and it feels good. Some songs are all over the damn place. And some songs have a high beat per minute and a low beat. A lot of people's rhythm in life, unfortunately, is it's slow and it's out of whack. It's like a 10-year-old just got a drum set, all over the place. And it's slow. So they don't get much done. And they feel like, nobody enjoys the rhythm of my life. Nobody enjoys it. They don't even enjoy it, right? What I've found over time was like that identity is that flow behind the scenes. It's the things that you're not constantly thinking about. It's how you handle hardships, how you attack situations, how you see opportunity or don't see opportunity. What do you do when somebody cuts you off? What do you do when you make a bunch of money? What do you do? Who are you? You're not thinking about it, which is your rhythm. And so for me, I went through so many different situations. I found a way to get to a flow for how my entire life, every day, all day is in a different rhythm. And if I want something more, I understand how to go after it in a different way. And then I have a vision of what I see. And if you can get to a kind of a different understanding of how to program that thing, how to operate that thing, it'll control your life in an amazing way. And so for me, when I work with people and I even step in this conversation identity right now, I'm sure people, you're probably like, bring it down to earth, right? People are probably thinking, bring it to earth. I'm going to bring it to earth for you. You're living a life and you have been being somebody every day. Every day of your life, you've been being somebody. And that being has become who you are right now. And that's who has everything that you have, the house, the money, the cars, the happiness, joy, because you've been being somebody every day. And if you want to have more at the back end, you have to become somebody different. Same you, but become happier, become more joyful, become capable, become more skilled. It only happens from your being every day, your rhythm. And so if you want to achieve more, you can get more information, but it's kind of like saying, all right, I got all this stuff. People, I think we're in an epidemic of self-esteem right now. It's buy the books, listen to the podcasts, put on the shelf and feel good about myself, but never open the book, therefore never apply the concept, therefore never get the benefit. And so for me, a lot of the things that I do is I step into people's worlds and I teach them how to be able to get to the next level of being on a daily basis to become that person who has everything they want in life later.
You know, it's interesting. Tony Robbins has said the most powerful force in the human psyche is people's need to remain consistent with their identity.
Yeah.
So basically how we define ourselves. If I'm gonna, if no knock to shoe salesman, but if my identity is I'm a shoe salesman, then there's a certain bandwidth within that shoe salesman that I'm going to behave within. So I love how you're using the term identity to do it. Do you have any strategies for people that are, saying, well, okay, I'm definitely playing small. I want to play bigger. He's right. I need to shift my identity. What's something I can do to step into that?
Yeah, I have a full in-depth. So I went through the science of this before. When I started figuring out where my strength is, my weird superpower, I was like, I got to make this tangible. My story's great, but the only good part of it for somebody else, yourself, is going to be, what can I take from this? Yeah. So I have full coaching programs, but everything dials into this one thing that we do every day. It's if I talk about rhythm is what you do consistently all day, every day. And I started realizing that for a lot of people, they don't intentionally think about who they're being. They'll borrow habits from Rob. They'll borrow habits from, Kim. They'll borrow habits from Anthony. And then what they end up doing is like just doing these things. They get to midlife and go, I don't know who I am. Well, yeah, because you were borrowing these things. You never thought about who you were. You never planned it. You started doing things, but then you realize it's not really in line. The job your parents told you to get, the relationship you're in because you've been in it for a while. So what I do is, I call it shift, because my whole thing is to shift your identity by shifting the level at which you rhythm, right? The level at which you operate. And so it's you do every single day. I look at it as this SHIFT. If you can do these things every day and find your own, there's some thinking, a ton of thinking behind how we build into this for people. But the first S is like, how do you start your day? Like, are you starting right? This is the routine. People have such a craziness in their heart right now. Like, Anthony, what do I do in this crazy hiatus of the world? Take control of the controllables. It's the only way you find a little sense of peace and grounding. Start your day right, man. I get my workout, I get my oatmeal, I get my tea, I get my hard-boiled eggs. I settle in. I'm in control of the seat right now, right?
Got to get that oatmeal in the morning.
I got the bowl right here. I'm still, you know what I'm saying? So like, start right. And then once you start right, the next H is like, do a healthy activity. Like, do something that's, and I'm not saying do a crazy, like, workout every day, like I do, whatever you want to do, but I'm like, healthy. If you eat out 3 times a day, like, make it once. You know what I'm saying? Stop smoking 1 cigarette. Do something that's a healthy progression, because there's something to doing a healthy progression that makes you feel better about your body, which turns into feeling better about yourself at a soul and mental level. The I, every day, I believe we need to do an imperative activity towards the direction of our dreams. I think some people go through life and like, I have this dream, and a week goes by and I took no action. I feel crappy because I took no action. Now, I'm not saying every day go and, try and jump off the Empire State Building and, and do like a skydive thing. Like, that's a big one. But choosing it, what must be done today to move you closer? Even if it's a 0.5 millimeter closer, what's that one imperative activity that's got to be done, right? What the IA, find that, do that every day, and momentum builds, man, little by little by little. And then for me, the F is, where have you found joy? I look at my life and I find we have a lot of these moments where things just, how they suck. And people wonder, why am I so happy? Because I go looking for something and I find it. My wife has a business. I'm the handyman. I'm good with my hands. I build things. And so literally, like, I don't always like doing stuff for her. I got to drive into one of her group home businesses a couple, towns over, but I find joy. You know what? Like, my joy is sometimes I'm going to put a cool playlist on and sing on the way there in the car. And then I'm going to have headphones. I'm going to get to listen to an audiobook while I'm doing the handyman work. I found joy in that moment. So when I get to the back end of my day, I have a collection, even in sucky moments, of areas that I found joy. And so if I do that every day, man, you start being more appreciative. You find more gratitude. The world's just brighter. And the last one's called a tree task. This actually ties into the tree concept. I have a whole work through of this. I call it roots and fruits. I believe in life, we have roots that anchor us to create the fruits in our life. And if the storms of life come and the roots are deep, it can withstand the storm. Then it can make fruit. If not, it gets uprooted, thrown across town, tree dies, right? So what I do is I have people go through these 10 areas of life. And I say, okay, if we were to write this crazy cool picture of like, what's this, the tree task, what's the future, right? The roots and fruits future. If we were to extrapolate this, what could be an amazing future for all of these? And then what we do is say, what is one thing you can do in that area over the next 30 days that would move it 1 tick closer? We have it numerically, like 1 through 10. What's one little thing? It could be calling your mom, on Monday, every Monday. It could be, reading the Bible. It could be, handling an emotional moment a little bit better. What did you do that day that was one tree task? So every day, these things are pre-thought out, but now I get a daily check thing I'm doing that puts me into a rhythm. It's pre-planned because now we're actually crafting beforehand, like what I call your ideal identity. And so anybody that's sitting there like, how do this every single day? Think about who you want to become. Then think about what's a good routine. How would I start the day right? What is something I could do for health? What's the imperative activity? Where can I find joy? And what can I do as a tree task, which for me would be, what can be one thing you can do to be closer toward the identity you want? Because like you said, the human need is to be in line with the identity, but not the one that you have now. Like you're not stuck at this identity. It was programmed when you were a kid by your teachers, preachers, coaches. Everybody taught us different things. And we've been using that programming like a computer programming all of our life. But right now we're in a point where it's like you're a brand new hardware computer waking up in 2021, but you got Windows 95 running your life. And so if you
when you think about when you think about identity, which this I love Shift because it's actionable. You could literally when the shit hits the fan, you could shift and you can go SH and you could just, even if you grabbed one of those things and you weren't able to, like, you weren't in the place where you can go, shifting gears all the way down the line. Even if you grabbed one, it's going to make a measurable difference. But while you were speaking about identity, one thing hit me in this time that we're in right now. If you call yourself a Democrat, you're inside of that Democratic box, right? The identity of a Democrat. You call yourself a Republican, you're in that box too, which is why nobody can shift out of that Democratic or Republican box because of their identity, right?
Yeah. It's ego. Well, the identity is there, but the ego attached to it won't let you do that. You can
not gonna let it happen.
But your ego's like, no, I can't do that because I'd lose faith and I'd lose, so that's kind of the ego is a whole different conversation, but it's part of the process for sure.
All right. So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you some random questions. Just roll with it. First thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
All right. I'm ready.
What's on your nightstands?
Books. I got books and a knife. I have like a dual action knife on my bedstand. So if people want to break it in my house, they can't kill me before I get to my gun.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never heard that one before. What do people often get wrong about you?
They think that I am a big, black, quiet, mean guy. They get the fact wrong that I'm a very happy, joyous. I got a good switch, but I'm a really happy guy.
What are the things that you do that's hard as shit, but totally worth it? Give me one thing that you do that this is hard as shit, but it's worth it.
I apologize to my kids when I'm wrong. That they're I need my kids to have self-respect, and we all do. And my kids, if they don't feel respected by at least the core person in their life, I don't feel like they have that going into the world. So if I make a mistake and they know that I made the mistake and I go, whatever, I'm just dad, I've ruined and I think shaped incorrectly their self-esteem. So if I'm wrong, I'll go back there and in even heated arguments like, all right, hey, look, I realize it wasn't you. I messed up. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Truly, I'm sorry. My bad. So it's hard emotionally, but it's powerful to do.
What's an unusual or absurd thing that you love?
That I love? I love tea, man. I don't drink coffee. I got a cast iron tea set. I test the teas over at the tea spot, bro. I'm a tea guy, bro.
That's unusual, unless you live in London. If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
If I could spend 1 month, it would be locked. We've already done this. I'd be locked away with my kids and my wife in some, we'll call it like a cabin up in maybe Tahoe, anywhere away from off the grid. I love my family, and it doesn't matter where I'm at as long as they're all there.
Are you remarried to the ex?
Yeah, man. We went through craziness, the whole thing. I ended up shooting one of her ex-boyfriends that came to the house drunk trying to fight me. And he came in. I told him multiple times and he tried to break into that. He literally kicked in the door and came in. So I shot him in his leg. But yeah, we went through some craziness. However, we both grew immensely, amazingly. There's a whole other story there, but we're remarried in an amazing marriage, dude. I love my wife. I go through it 7 times again to get back to where we're at.
Man, I never want to meet your wife. If I find her attractive, I'm gonna either get a knife or I'm gonna get a gun. That's coming. What did people never ask you, but you wish they did?
We never asked me, wish I did. My why. I think people never ask my why, man. They see what I do and they find joy in it. But why I do what I do is a deeper thing we don't have to get into, but really it's a promise, man. I made 2 promises to my mom before she passed away in 2014 from MS. And it was a promise that I would fix my life that was broken at the time. And then second thing was that I would give back to the world the way she gave to me unconditionally to create the person I am. So I'm making good in the second promise for the rest of my life with joy.
Love it. Last question. We're going to change it up. What one question would you like to ask me?
Question I'd ask you is how do you get your hair look like that, bro? I can't do that with my hair.
Listen, it's a lot of gel. It takes a lot of money to look this cheap. Let me tell you, it's a lot of gel. It's a lot of blow drying. I got like Elton John's hairdresser on standby. I mean, you have no idea what I got going.
Like Johnny Bravo. Remember Johnny Bravo cartoon? Looking good, dude.
It's funny. My brother says you look like Bob's Big Boy. All right. Well, listen, this has been absolutely incredible. For people, do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for people that are listening?
I'm always about making them own their shift, man. That's the big thing. All the stuff starts with owning the fact that you have something to do. Own that there's a thing you got to work on. Actually, realize you're the one responsible for getting that thing done, your fault or not, and then shift. Do the work necessary to make that thing change, and it'll be worth it in the end. Always is.
Beautiful, brother. It was great connecting with you. I loved it, and everybody else will too.
Thank you.